Ladies and gentlemen, my name's Paul, hopefully having an amazing day. I'm going to start this video out discussing Zen 4, specifically updates to the clock frequency that AMD are targeting for the Ryzen 7000 series processors, and then we're going to move over to Threadripper, TSMC 3/4nm, and a few other things as well. But first of all, a quick message from this video's sponsor. Did you just build a shiny new PC? Then you'll need a genuine copy of Windows 10 so you can personalize the system and of course get rid of that annoying activation watermark. We've partnered with WhoKeys to give you guys great discounts on Windows 10 keys, and of course they could be fully upgraded to Windows 11 too. You can get 30% off using the coupon code RGT during checkout. I've purchased several of these keys in the past using a personal non-RGT affiliated account, and they've worked flawlessly with quick delivery. If you want to pick up a copy of Windows for as little as $15 or a cheap and legit copy of Office, check the links out in the video description below. Several days ago, I released a video detailing the IPC as well as some clock frequency information for Ryzen 7000. I've been hearing that the IPC gains were going to be around 25%. Now, this is over the vanilla Zen 3 architecture. This is not including the V-cache processors. And on top of that, again, we've already officially seen AMD show off these CPUs running with an all-core clock in Halo Infinite at 5 GHz. And I'd been hearing that we could be seeing up to 5.5 GHz. However, this does not seem to be the case according to what I've been hearing now from one of my sources. Indeed, it seems that the clock frequency is going to be somewhere in the neighborhood of around 5.2 to 5.3 GHz, which is still a meaningful leap over what AMD currently enjoy with Zen 3. Now, ultimately, I believe Zen 4 is kind of more of an evolution in microprocessor architecture over Zen 3. So it does have a host of improvements. AVX 512 support is one of those, and we also see L2 cache as well doubled, which is, as I've mentioned in previous videos, going to offer a host of improvements, not least of which more energy efficient, yes, but just cache improvements in general is going to be really important as we start to move towards DDR5 memory and higher latencies. And I think that Zen 4 is going to be a really big step for AMD. It's going to be really interesting because I don't personally think Raptor Lake is probably going to be enough to counter Zen 4. I would love to be wrong. I would love for them to be roughly equal in performance because that would be great for us as customers. But I suspect, especially in games, at least from what I'm hearing right now anyway, AMD are probably going to have the lead on Intel. And actually, while we're detailing stuff for AMD, I want to also go through a quick update for AMD's Threadripper, and it concerns the core counts. So Threadripper is an interesting product. It definitely filled kind of a niche for AMD. Initially, it's, at least the official story is, Threadripper hadn't actually been a product that they'd planned. It was actually kind of like a labor of love from engineers within the company. Initially, I only wanted to go with Ryzen and, of course, EPYC. But Threadripper has definitely been pretty popular for a certain niche of consumers because ultimately it's really cool for things like 3D artists, video, content creators, that kind of thing. And obviously, core counts have also been something that Intel just has not been able to keep up with. In the future, who knows what AMD will be facing from Intel, but right now anyway, yeah, they're just getting their butts kicked by Threadripper, and I think this is going to continue. So I'm actually hearing that Zen 4 Threadrippers could go 96 and 128 cores, and Zen 5 could go up to 256 cores, although there is a possibility that they may only release 192 core variants for these processors. Now, when it comes to Zen 5, we know that there's energy as well as performance cores. However, I do believe that the 256/192 cores is actually in reference to the performance cores. Now, I don't need to tell you guys that that is absolutely kind of bonkers, to be honest with you. And quite frankly, I checked with a couple of my sources because when the first source told me this, I was like, really? That just seems kind of ridiculous. But a couple of sources have told me the exact same figure. Now, of course, as with anything, this number could be wrong, but I mean, ultimately, these are products which are obviously becoming quite expensive, and AMD are not going to necessarily aim, the top end Threadripper necessarily at a home user. Obviously, these could be, for example, at certain game development studios or whatever, and then obviously they can kind of portion off those cores based upon certain things, or have them to render movie content or whatever. And ultimately, you can just imagine that this amount of kind of performance is absolutely bonkers. It'll be really interesting to see how, if this is true though, how AMD are going to segment their product offerings between it and EPYC. We've already seen some kind of, examples of this, with the current generation of Threadripper / EPYC CPUs. And honestly, it's just going to be kind of nuts to see how future architectures are going to evolve. This video is kind of turning out to be a little bit bitsy because I'm doing a little bit of checking regarding some information for Zen 5 at the moment. But I am hearing that Zen 5 is going to be a monumental leap forward, whereas Zen 3 to Zen 4 is kind of I don't want to say iterative step because it actually sounds kind of insulting, but Zen 5 is definitely a major redesign in the thinking of AMD, especially when it comes to things like energy efficiency. Speaking of energy efficiency, well, at least kind of, let's move over to TSMC, shall we? Because more recently I covered a rumour that had been swirling from Grayman that we would actually see certain AMD products, such as, say, Zen 5, actually not be on TSMC's 3nm process. And the reason behind this was basically yields, to my understanding anyway. Well, this doesn't seem to be 100% true, kind of. I've actually been speaking to a couple of sources, and what is valid is that some products from AMD will not be utilizing 3nm. And as of the time I'm recording this, I'm not 100% certain which products are which. However, I have been told that AMD in the future will use both 4 as well as 3nm. I believe that initially Zen 5 will probably not use 3nm for things like, again, the reasons that I've already mentioned, yields, as well as the fact that Apple are going to be gobbling up a lot of production as well. However, eventually, I suspect that later products probably will use 3nm. Another interesting thing is that the 2nm development of TSMC is actually coming on rather well, apparently. And this brings me to the final topic of today, and that would be GPU prices. Look, we all know that late last year, GPU prices were, well, let's just be blunt, ridiculous. They were just becoming absolutely insane. And it was just simply because of demand, as everyone knows. Products like the RTX 3060 Ti, the 3090, and so on, they were being created in large quantities. And ultimately, the prices just kept going up and up and up, not only because of mining, but just about everyone at that time was buying PC hardware. And let's just be totally honest, the whole market was absolutely screwed. But with this all said, GPU prices are now not just trending downwards, but they are dropping significantly. I'm going to leave a link to a Tech Radar article, which actually does a pretty nice write-up of all of this. But I'm just letting you guys know that, frankly, I wouldn't buy any graphics card at this point. With a few exceptions, which are pretty obvious. One, if you really need a new GPU. Let's just say, for example, your GTX 1080 just exploded and, you're a PC gamer. You just need a new GPU. Fine. If you are using a graphics card for something like work, like you're a 3D model or something like that, obviously that's a totally different thing. But let's just say, for sake of this discussion, you've got a pretty decent card. Let's just say a GTX 1080 Ti, it's working absolutely brilliantly, and you're debating should you pick up a 3080 or not. Personally, I would say wait, maybe even until the next generation of cards is released. And quite frankly, we are seeing some significant price drops here. Just for example, on Nvidia's side, it wasn't too long ago, you can see yourself with this graph, that we were seeing RTX 3090s for an absolutely eye-watering $3,000 US, whereas now they're much cheaper, like $2,300-$2,400. Other cards, like even the 2080 Ti, was going for well over $1,100, $1,200 US, and now it's dropped to well under $1,000 US. And furthermore, of course, these drops are continuing to happen really quickly. I also did a really quick Google around, well, I say Google, I went to eBay, looked at prices, and I also went to a couple of well-known retailers in the UK, and I'm also noticing availability is just better across the board. Now, I say that with caveat, of course, that things could change at any moment. As of the time I'm recording this, cryptocurrency value has just plummeted substantially, and of course, with things like, what's happening with Ethereum as it's going to become proof of stake and all this other stuff, I think people are not mining as much. And as of the time, again, that I'm recording this, there are a ton of GPUs that are starting to appear on eBay. And quite frankly, some of them looked a little worse for wear. They looked like they'd been in the mines, bless them. And I don't necessarily know if I'd advocate buying like a fresh, GTX 1080 or something like that had been mined to near death. But with that said, it is a good sign that prices are starting to come down. Personally, I am hearing that availability for the next generation cards is going to be a really big thing. Nvidia, there's actually been some leaks that they have put a few pennies down when it comes to procuring not 7nm, I was about to say 7nm availability, but 5nm availability from TSMC. And ultimately, obviously, TSMC are kind of like the arbiters of fate to a degree at this point. Like how much availability you can get from TSMC ultimately is going to really dictate how many products that you can have in the market. And I suspect that AMD and Nvidia and pretty much anyone else actually are just going to pretty much have to bend the knee as best they can. I'm hoping that when Intel really starts to get swinging with its new fabs, that we could see some competition. Samsung obviously have quite a way to go. But yeah, ultimately, this is some really good news. With that said, thank you very much for checking out the video. If you've enjoyed it, you know what to do. Leave a likey on the video, and I will see you soon. Take care of yourselves. Bye for now.